Hi, welcome to my channel, and if you're new here, I am Tracy Milan and I am the owner and creator of Brewmill Candle Company. Follow along as I make 300 candles. So first of all, what I do is I leave all of my jars right inside the boxes that I get them from Uline, and I take off all of the lids. I turn the jars over and I put the warning labels on right away. That is the first thing that we do. I created these warning labels and sent them over to Uline, and Uline made the sheets for me. So I have, I don't know, a couple thousand of them always available, and I find that a lot easier to use than the standard warning ones. It has my name and all my contact information on it. So we get that on there first, and as you can see, it's sped up here, and I just go 24 at a time, box after box, and all the labels are now on. So we will then turn them all over. As you can see, I do that fast. And then I grab a towel and I put it down on the table and I attach my labels. I create all of my labels on Canva. I print them through Maestro, and I use the online labels. These ones are the 2.5 by 3. I believe they're called OL3089, and they happen to fit these Uline jars just perfectly for my liking. After they're labeled, I just pop them right back in the box, and then they're ready for the next step, which is wicking them. And so that's what that label looks like there. And before I wick, I grab one of these little tools. I wrap a piece of paper towel around it, use some isopropyl alcohol, get that paper towel nice and wet, and I just clean out the bottom of every one of my jars. It only takes about an extra 5 or 10 minutes to do this, and I find that the wick attaches to it much better when the bottom is nice and cleaned out. So after I clean it out, then it is ready for wicks. So I just grab my wicks and I throw them in. These ones are Eco 10. I happen to like these in this size jar. They work very well for me, so I buy a whole bunch of bags of those, and I just plop them all inside every single one. And this Wick Setter is fabulous. I can't remember where I got it. Maybe Lonestar. I'll find out and put a link in here, but it's wonderful. It, as you can see, it speeds up the process. I get my wicks centered just perfectly in there every single time, and it fits multiple size jars, but it fits that one just perfectly. So as you can see, my jars are all labeled. The wicks are sitting inside waiting to be wicked, and I've done that in a quick hurry. So I find for one box of 24 8-ounce jars, I use exactly 10 ounces of wax. And so that's 4 pounds per pouring jug. And I'm using 10% fragrance oil in this load. So it's going to be 6.4 ounces of fragrance per pouring jug. So one pouring jug has 4 pounds in it, the other pouring jug has 4 pounds in it, and then the third pouring jug has 2 pounds in it. So for a total of 10 pounds of wax, melted wax. Each 4-pound jug is going to get 6.4 ounces, and then the 2-pound is going to get half of that, which is 3.2 ounces, which you'll see here in a minute. I get relatively close, 6.4, 6.38, 6.42. I'm not too worried about a point over or a point under. Now I'm doing my 2-pound jar, pouring jug, and that is going to be 3.2 ounces of fragrance oil. And there, we get nice and close there. And that's the end of that jar. Actually, I find that one of those containers of the fragrance oil is perfect for me. It gives me exactly what I want, which is 6.4, 6.4, and 3.2 ounces. And it works out well. I like to pour at about 130 degrees. This is a Parasoy blend, and I have it blended as well with more soy, and it's a really nice blend actually. So I wait until it's about 130 128 to 134 degrees before I pour. So I get my fragrance oils all ready. I have the well melted wax sitting there waiting for me, and I will come back in a couple of minutes, and we'll probably be at that 134. But in the meantime, this is what I'm pouring. Bloomerang is my lilac bush fragrance, and I'm going to pour 24 of those here. Each box has 24 jars, and I have a different fragrance going on in each one. So now I'm back, and I can tell by the color. I don't even really need my temperature thermometer to tell me, but I'm going to show you anyway what it's at. But after I pour in my fragrance oil, it does cool the wax down quite a bit, and it gets a little cloudy, which is exactly what I want. That's how I want it to be. So that should be around 128 to 132 degrees Fahrenheit now. And I stir for a full 2 minutes. I have a little timer there. You probably can't see it, but it's right underneath my right hand. There it is. And I go for exactly 2 minutes. I like the 2-minute mark. It works out really well. It binds it nicely. I don't know if it's necessary or not. I've heard controversy about it on both sides. It works for me. I do 2 minutes. I get a nice cloudy texture to my wax, and it gets it down to that 128 to 130 degrees, which is where I like to pour. And that looks like it's pretty good. I think my timer is running down. I got about a minute left on it. And so I won't make you hang on while I stir. I think I'm going to clip the camera here for a second, and it'll only be for about 35 seconds. And so this pouring tool is fabulous. I love it. It is a pancake pourer. I get it off Amazon. And I literally can pour so many candles with this thing without making any messes. I don't have to worry about the weight of the aluminum pouring pitcher, which can be pretty heavy when it's filled with 4 pounds of wax, and it does make me slop a little bit. So I purchased this, and I actually have 2 of them, and I use them all the time. I just think they're the best. And so it's got a little holder that you can just rest it on. And so this is what I do when I have a little bit of wax left over in the bottom of my pouring jar. I don't like any wax to go down my sink. I don't like any wax to go anywhere other than paper towel in the garbage. And so I try to take out every last drop that I can. And I over pour all of my candles. They're definitely exceed the 8-ounce amount on there because I get right up to the top. But I also, I don't like to leave anything behind. It makes it a lot easier for me to clean up these jars. I just use a heat gun on it a little bit, and I pour it right down into that pancake pourer, and I'll go right over top of each one of my candles, and some candles will just get a whole lot extra more wax on it than the other ones, but I'll empty every last drop into my vessels. And so I use a lot of paper towel, and as soon as the jar is hot from heating up, I like to wipe out any excess right away. I don't even wait for that to cool. My candle wax is okay sitting there cooling for another 20 seconds while I clean it out. It won't make any difference in the pour. In fact, I find when it's a nice muddy color like this, I don't get any sinkholes. I don't get anything. I get excellent jar adhesion. Everything works out well. So as you can see by this pancake pourer, it just pours along. And it's a great little tool. I love it. It has made me a lot more efficient in my ability to pour, and obviously a lot cleaner. I don't have to worry about any messes, and I just cruise along, as you can see. I'm just pouring, and the smell is fabulous. So before I put my Wick Setters on, I like to go over it with my heat gun just a little bit while it's still wet. And the reason being is because I had mentioned earlier that I do like to top off with the last few drops that are inside there. And as you can see, it leaves a little bit of a blob. I find that's a little hard to melt out later on when it dries. So I just run my heat gun over top of this candle, all of these candles, before I put my Wick Setters on. And I find that it comes out nice and smooth that way if I give it a nice little blast. So here I'm putting on these Wick Setters, and I really, really like these. I don't pull them down and attach them like they're supposed to be done. There's a little attachment on there. I don't do that. I find that sometimes the wax is so hot that it just pulls the wicks right out of the tab. So I just put them inside so that they're standing upright and they're centered. And more paper towel, more paper towel. This job takes a lot of paper towel, but it's good because later I'm going to pour my hot water down there and I'll show you. And the paper towel is actually really beneficial because it gathers it. So now I'm at the end and I'm going to clean out my pots. And so a lot of you have asked what I do about cleaning out my pots. I'll tell you what, this hot water business is the way to go. So I boil a pot of hot water on my induction little stove top there. I don't have a stove down in my basement. We just have one of those little stove tops from Costco. And it boils water for me. And I pour the hot water right inside of the aluminum tin, pouring vessels. Pouring jars, and I wipe it out with paper towel right away, and then I move it over. In the meantime, my sink is filled with hot bubbly water, but I want to make sure that I get everything out before it goes in. So really the only thing I'm cleaning out is the fragrance that might have been left over, any kind of scent that's left over. I used to use alcohol, like a lot of you have mentioned. I found that the aluminum likes to really absorb the smell of the alcohol. And honestly, I feel I was smelling it in my fragrances. So I moved away from alcohol a long time ago for cleaning out these pouring jugs. And this hot water and paper towel business is the way to go. So basically, I fill up half that pot that you see there with hot water, and I boil it. And I just transfer that from one pot to the next, to the next, to the next, until the water's pretty much cooled right down. And so as I add the hot water to each one of these pouring tools, I just swirl it around a little bit. And with this pancake mixer, I want to try to get all around the edges. So you want to try to do this without burning yourself. It definitely has caught me a couple of times. But a lot of that wax likes to hang up at the top there. And just let a little bit of hot water roll over it, and it just takes it away. So I pour it into one pot, I swirl that around, I pour it back into that pot. I use a piece of paper towel and I wipe it out, and I get right in there and I try to get as much as I can. There's that wax just hangs on everywhere, and you don't want this to get caught up in this pancake mixer because it's a little fragile in the sense that if it does get stuck, because the wax kind of creates like a bit of a glue and a bond, and then you go to pull that trigger, you will pull that rubber end right off of it. So the success for me for this tool has been always make sure that it is super clean and I don't ever allow wax to harden inside of it. And hot water is my friend. And so as you can see, I'm just pouring it from one to the next, to the next. And this really is not a tedious job. It takes maybe about 10 minutes at the end of my day. And it's worth it because I really don't want a plumbing bill. We just renovated this whole house from top to bottom. We purchased this little old house and it had a completely empty basement. For 50 years, it was just a concrete basement. Didn't even have any lights or power down here. And I built a second kitchen downstairs while I was renovating it. And I wasn't sure at the time why I was doing it. It wasn't our house. We didn't live here. We had purchased it actually for my father, and then he decided to move to Quebec. So we ended up with this house. And by the time we finished the 2-year renovation, which we did ourselves, we ended up falling in love with the house. And so we sold it. We sold our main home and we moved into this one. And at the time I was building the kitchen, I was like, why am I building a second kitchen in the basement? It just seemed like it was the right thing to do. I had all of these cabinets available in the storage room, and I had this spare space down here. And I built a really beautiful kitchen down in this. You can't see it in this video, but it is a beautiful kitchen. And anyway, so I'm so fortunate that I did that. I'm so very, very lucky that I had the thought at the time to put a kitchen down here because it is real handy. But I don't have a stove, so I use this little top here. So I boil some water, I put it in all of these, I use the paper towel, I clean everything out. I am diligent about making sure that no wax ever makes it down my plumbing. As I was saying earlier, we've put enough money in this house. The last thing I want to do is have a big plumbing bill. So after I've wiped everything out with paper towel, it just goes right into some hot soapy water in the sink. And I just move on to the next one. And then when I'm finished, I finally have just one little pot of water left over. And as you can see, as it moves from one jug to the next, I just wipe it out with paper towel. And then I know that no wax is going anywhere. So here's my second pancake pourer. Exactly the same thing. You just move it from side to side, get everything off of the top. And this seems a little bit redundant, I suppose, now that I'm watching the video. It is definitely repeating itself, but thanks for hanging in there. I just wanted to, make sure that you can see as I'm going through that it's really not a time-consuming effort to do this, and it just gets all of that wax out of everything. So you're probably wondering what I do with the last of the water, and as you can see, it's only about a half a pouring pitcher full of water. I don't really use a lot. I just, it's just enough to go from one of my pouring tools to the next pouring tool. So whether that's my pitcher or my pancake pourer. And then when I'm done with that, it goes in the sink, and then the last goes right into the last jug. And it really is just the same. It's filling up with wax as I go. Each one is getting a little waxier, and that's okay, but it has kept its heat. It's nice and hot. There's really no wax left over in my vessels, in my pouring jugs. And then the very last of it goes right over top of that paper towel that you saw me throwing in the garbage can, which is, it's part of my process. So the paper towel captures all of the water, and it all goes in the garbage, and nothing ends up down my drain. And so this is the last pot. I'm just going to wipe that right out. And that's it. No more wax. Clean up my work surface. And yeah, so I don't know if any of you have ever had a big plumbing bill, but I'll tell you, this wax down the drain, I don't care what anyone tells you, it is not good for it. I notice even when I'm pouring, it's not even good to just pour hot water down your drain either, because I can pour hot water over top of those aluminum pouring jugs all day long, and I still need paper towel to take it out. So here we are. This is, there's 24 in each box, and as you can see, they're labeled ahead of time. These ones here are ready to be clipped off. And I'll throw a heat gun over the top of these just to give them a little bit of a smoother top, but they're relatively smooth. I really don't mind the 5-minute effort per box at the end. I haven't taken the clips off this one yet, but as you can see, I label the outside of the box, because once I take these off and clip them down and heat up the tops, I am going to pop the lids on, and they're going right into inventory. So the box being labeled with what the candle is inside is really beneficial to me. These ones I can't pick up to show you because they're still hot. The other ones were just a little bit warm, but these ones are still pretty hot. And so that's it. That's my process on how I pour 300 candles. And I'm hoping I kept the video below 30 minutes. And here's the other ones that I poured earlier in the day. These ones already have their lids on. They're still quite warm. I mean, they're not super warm. They're just still a little bit warm. So they'll stay in the house overnight before we move them out to the shop where they will get stored away. And that's it. So thank you very much for watching. And if you have any questions, please feel free to message below.